In an attempt to hide his identity, a Japanese man wanted for the murder of a British woman scissored off his lower lip, dug 2 moles out of his cheek with a box cutter, and had a nose job while on the run for 2.5 years. In late March 2007, Lindsay Hawker, who was only 22, was discovered dead in a sand-filled bathtub on the balcony of Tatsuya Ichihashi's residence in a Tokyo suburb, Ichikawa. Lindsay Hawker was born in Coventry, England. She moved to Tokyo after her graduation to teach English at the Nova Language School in Kiowa, then Japan's largest private English conversation school. Hawker shared an apartment with 2 other foreign female professors. Hawker met Ichihashi for the first time when she was getting ready to go home after teaching English lessons to her students. Ichihashi approached Hawker with a question if she could be his English teacher. Hawker said no and went away from the spot. Ichihashi chased her till she arrived at her house. He apologized for his behavior and kindly asked for a glass of water. Hawker accepted his apology, but she still did not trust Ichihashi, so she introduced both of her flatmates to Ichihashi. In this meeting, Ichihashi won the trust of Hawker and her flatmates. He convinced Hawker to teach him English lessons for a decent price. Hawker couldn't say no to the offer, and the two decided to meet in a cafe. With this, Ichihashi sketched a picture of her and signed it with his name, phone number, and email address. Hawker and Ichihashi met on March 24, 2007. After learning an English lesson for 1 hour, Ichihashi pretended to forget money and asked Hawker to come with him to his apartment to get the fees. They then took a taxi to Ichihashi's flat, which was only a few hundred yards away. Hawker asked the cab driver to wait a few minutes, as it was just about taking the fees and leaving, and thought she would take the same taxi to her flat. The taxi driver waited for a few minutes, and when he saw no one coming, he left. Hawker's friends attempted to contact the police, but the message was not forwarded to the appropriate officers within the department. 2 days later, the school reported Hawker missing at 2:30 p.m. on the 26th of March, after she failed to teach her classes scheduled for March 25th and 26th. 2 officers were immediately deployed on March 26th. They arrived at Ichihashi's residence at 5:40 p.m. and discovered something suspicious and requested 7 more officers for backup. When Ichihashi became aware of the situation, he ran away from the officers while barefoot and carrying a backpack. The officers didn't have radios, so they couldn't inform those on the ground. He got away by zipping down the street. Hawker's belongings were discovered strewn over the room. Her naked body was later discovered on the apartment's balcony, hidden in a bathtub filled with compost, soil, and sand. Plastic ties and scarves had been used to bind and gag her, and one of her hands had been left outside the mixture. Hawker's upper body was covered in bruises, indicating that she had been attacked for a long time. Hawker and Ichihashi were both trained in martial arts, although Ichihashi had more experience and holds a black belt. Hawker had died when her attacker strangled her and fractured her neck cartilage. After she was killed, Ichihashi shaved her head. In the hours preceding the police arrival, Ichihashi purchased the items over the course of 6 visits to his local hardware store. Investigators believe Ichihashi carried Hawker's body into his bathtub from the bathroom to the balcony between the night of the 25th and early morning of the 26th. During that time, neighbors reported hearing noises of something striking metal and being dragged. Police issued an arrest warrant for Ichihashi, accusing him of abandoning Hawker's body and adding him to a national wanted list. When the police were unable to locate Ichihashi, police released a new wanted poster that featured an enlarged image of the culprit dressed as a woman. They also posted photos of Hawker's sketch in the hopes that someone might recognize the style of his sketching. Ichihashi had no criminal history. However, he had been charged with theft and injury 6 years prior to Hawker's murder. After eluding the cops who arrived at his residence to question him, he used a thread and needle to narrow his nose, much like a chef trussing a piece of meat. Ichihashi roamed around Tokyo before heading north to Aomori Prefecture, where he attempted to thin his lower lip by cutting off a portion of it.
両腕や太ももにあざが複数見つかりました。また浴槽は幅121センチメートル。彼らが迎えるクリスマスは夏真っ盛り。そんな彼らのクリスマスソングお聴きください。
Ichihashi avoided eye contact with anyone and avoided monitoring cameras in stores. When he suspected he was being followed, he changed his location immediately. He didn't communicate with his family or friends after committing the crime. Once he walked past a police station and saw a wanted poster with his face on it, where it asked people to notice his 2 moles. It was then that he tried to cut out the moles from his cheek. He had saved around $12,000 from working on different construction sites and spent the majority of the money on 2 plastic surgeries, and decided to get both surgeries in 2 different clinics. He went to the first clinic to get a longer and narrower nose, and to the second to increase the bridge of his nose. Ichihashi was not lucky enough to escape from everywhere unrecognized. The staff at the second clinic took a lot of images of his left cheek before performing the surgery, but it seemed weird when they noticed the traces of moles he'd removed. The clinic reported his visit and sent the photos to the police. The news was splashed on TV and in Japanese newspapers with his recent photos. When he saw the news about his cosmetic surgery, he immediately checked out of his hotel, had a haircut, and even purchased a beard, sideburn, and mustache. As Ichihashi waited to board an early evening ferry in Osaka, a passerby noticed him wearing a hat, sunglasses, and a paper surgical mask, and he informed the police.
Konnichiwa.
Ichihashi was then arrested for the murder of Lindsay Hawker. At the beginning of his first trial, Ichihashi said, quote, "Yes, she was raped by me, and I accept responsibility for Lindsay's death as a result of my actions. But I had no intention of killing her. Lindsay and I are the only ones who know that happened that day, but because of me, she is unable to speak for herself. So it's my responsibility to speak the truth." The victim's father had urged the court to show no mercy and sentence Ichihashi to death, but the court decided against it because Ichihashi had no prior convictions. Ichihashi was given a life sentence by the Chiba District Court on July 21, 2011.